paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Reporter Sally Patterson joins me now live from New York with the latest. So, Sally, Trump was originally scheduled to be sentenced later this month on the 18th. Bring us up to speed on today's decision.
Well, this is a very crucial ruling by Judge Juan Merchan, who's overseeing this case, and that's because this sentencing is now going to take place after the next presidential election here in the US. Voters would have already gone out and cast their votes for the next president of the United States by the time that this now goes to sentencing, if it does at all. It was due, as you say, to take place on the 18th, so in less than 2 weeks' time. But now, in a last-minute change, this sentencing has been pushed back to the 26th of November, and Judge Merchan gave that decision on Friday, handing down what he said was a relatively difficult decision to make, but he wanted to really push the idea that this is not a political case taking place. He had been fighting against a narrative created by Trump and his team that this was politically motivated, what he called a witch hunt against him, basically fueled by President Joe Biden and the rest of the Democrats, something that, of course, the Democrats have very strongly denied and really tried to stay away from, saying that the justice system needed to be able to act fairly and impartially. Now, that was something that Judge Merchan stressed as well on Friday, saying the court is a fair, impartial and apolitical institution. And he really said that it was simply too soon now to the election to go forward in this sentencing. A reminder of how we got here. Way back in May, Trump was found guilty on 34 felony counts. That's all in relation to a so-called hush money plot, where he was accused of paying money to adult film star Stormy Daniels in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election to try and influence the outcome of that election. It relates back to an affair that Daniels claims she had with Trump back in 2006 after they met at a golf course. She says that she went back to his room, they had sexual intercourse, and she says that they really have this relationship going forward. Trump strongly denies that account, saying that she really used it for her own political, for her own gain. And he says that that affair never happened. And he also denied any wrongdoing in this case. But the jury here in Manhattan did find him guilty in a really historic trial. Now what we're waiting to see is what the outcome of that trial is. We were hoping to have some of those answers in just a couple of weeks' time. He could face prison time for a finding like this. That isn't uncommon, although most of the analysts that I've spoken to and the legal experts say it's unlikely he will spend time in prison. But now we won't know until after voters have already decided who's going to be back in the White House next year.
And the judge also delayed a decision on a defense request to throw out the case on immunity grounds. Tell us about that.
That's right. It's slightly complicated here because Donald Trump is facing 4 different criminal cases across the country. This one here in New York is the only one that's gone to trial so far. But this immunity ruling that we're talking about relates to his election interference case, which is a federal one. And we heard from the US Supreme Court ruling that Trump was immune in some cases of some acts that he did in his official capacity as president. Now, his team is trying to argue that that should apply to some of what's being discussed here in this case as well. They allege that some of the testimony that's been brought up throughout this historic trial should never have been heard by the jury. They said that that influenced the jury's decision and actually makes this whole thing really irrelevant and should be thrown out. That's what they're continuing to argue. The judge had said that he was going to rule on that separate immunity request just 2 days before the sentencing was due to take place. That's now also been pushed back to November, a full 2 weeks before this sentencing is due to happen, if, of course, it happens at all, because if in that ruling Judge Merchan decides that none of these actually stand because of that, there will be no sentencing because Trump in this case will be off the hook. A reminder that we are right in the midst of election season now. Early voting is really about to begin. And so all eyes are on the polls. All eyes are on what these candidates are doing. Rulings like this could make a really crucial difference in November's presidential election. Back to you.
Sally, thank you. Reporter Sally Patterson live in New York. Now, the former U.S. president is also attempting to overturn a $5 million U.S. civil jury verdict. The Republican presidential nominee